Or oyster.
Look at
Oh my
that.
God.
I love it.
Okay, shall we call to order? Murph meeting, 2:04, July 13th, 2022.
All right.
Okay, I believe we stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like we're missing some people today. All right, so let's go ahead and do roll call.
Wendy DiCatano, present.
Robert Howell, present.
Jennifer Rusk, present.
Rose Larkin, present.
Chad Schutz, environmental staff. Ms. Mary Rose and Mr. Fossum had asked for a excused absence, and Steve is under the weather.
Okay, I guess that's why I'm leading here. Okay, so let's, does anybody want to move the motion to approve the agenda?
I had one question about the agenda and so then I would approve it. Under the Murph projects, does that include a vegetation project?
I believe in, let's see, the last minutes,
Right, it said to remove it, but I need to add it back in, although we can't really vote on it, but I'd still would like to,
have a discussion.
yeah, a brief one, 2 minutes.
So we would need to move a motion to add that to today's agenda.
Well, if it's under projects, I don't know what the Murph projects are besides
I think it would be
the
able to do that.
Move, okay.
pop-up tent and the vegetation project.
Because it's not specific, so.
I also don't have a copy of the agenda. Chad, do you have an extra copy with you?
They're out front. I can go get one for you.
Thank you.
Do you want to see mine while, so you can, that way you can okay it?
So then I move that we accept the agenda as proposed.
Do I have a second?
I second. I got one, but I gave it to her, so I'll take hers. Thank you.
Got one.
Okay, so next, do I have a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes from May 11th, 2022?
From June 8th. June
Oh,
8th.
June 8th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Public comment? Okay, it doesn't look like we have any public comments, so let's move on to our current items. Staff report, 5 minutes. I think we would look to.
Alrighty, so just to update y'all with what's going on the marine and environmental scene of Fort Myers Beach. So staff is following up with a second RAI request for additional information from FDEP and working with the town's coastal engineer to address the state's concerns with the town's proposed dune management plan. We've also received a number of emails from property owners of Terramar requesting to be included in the town's pre-nourishment project. There is issues with that, being that that area is not designated as critically eroded. That is the segment that staff had requested be designated as critically eroded, but FDEP did not designate that R200 to R203 as critically eroded. Therefore, it does not qualify for state and TDC funding. Terramar's concerns are that sand walkway between the Wyndham and Cresciente that floods during heavy rains. It is private property. It is it is landward of the mean high water line, so it would be a triple CL permit and it would, like I said, it's on private property, so we will follow up with those property owners and see what we can do for them. The 6,000 block experienced heavy flooding during the heavy rains during early June. A concerned citizen had reported cane toads breeding in that pond. There's also, as that pond filled up, significant erosion towards the north end of the sand kind of getting washed out as that water kind of finds its way out into the Gulf. Staff did send some educational material from FDP regarding means by which they can alleviate flooding on the beach under an exemption provided by the CCCL Rule 62B-33.004, which basically allows them to put a sump pump on the beach and pump out the water via outlet pipe into the Gulf, as long as they follow those exemption criteria, securing the pipe on that Gulf side so that it doesn't cause any scouring. Trash on the beach continues to be a tragedy. The commons in the downtown area, FDEP suggested the use of a barber rake, which can collect litter and debris within the top 2 inches of sand. An update on shorebird nesting. Productivity from the least tern colonies and black skimmers on Carlos Beach have been challenged by gull predation, flooding, and sand spurs. So it's been a little bit tough. The least tern colony in the CWA was productive. That's over in front of Shamron and Eden House. Also, FWC biologists have reported residents in the single-family residence 8,000 block acting a little aggressively towards them, private property rights issues, I guess voicing their feelings, including some verbal threats. That was a little unfortunate to hear. Bonfires have been also repeatedly observed over there, stacking wood anywhere from a few feet to overhead kind of piles of wood. So it's a little concerning in the CWA. Sea turtle nesting, overall the beach is darker. However, there are still issues. Resorts, Times Square, Old San Carlos businesses, and interior lights on condos, and beach vendor obstructions remain issues, and staff is working with responsive properties to come into compliance. And that's all I have.
Just a quick question. How many citations do you think you've written this year so far, just out of curiosity?
I'm not sure. I can get back to you on the next meeting with that.
Maybe not like warnings, but actual like actual tickets for monetary. I'm just curious. I was thinking about it. I don't know why.
Yep, I can get back to you on the next
All
meeting.
right, thank you. Yeah.
All right, without further ado, I think Mr. Herron wanted to talk to you all about the sunshine law, so if y'all wanted to move on to the next agenda item.
I actually had a question for you under staff reports, so if we could just hold off on Mr. Herron. So again, I'm kind of piggyback off of his question was, what's the status of all the beach vendors with their beach obstructions, and where are they storing the equipment?
So the status is some are working with us and some I haven't heard back from. I've started putting them on notice and letting them know that citations are being processed for the ones who are not working with us, and then those who are working with us, we're just monitoring their progress.
I hate to call out a specific company, but how is Lonnie Kai able to get away with so much on the beach? Are they getting cited for that with those picnic tables and chairs and stuff?
They are one of the resorts that are properties that we've been putting on notice.
Can't believe, I mean, just from purely like a surprise standpoint, that's like insane. I don't, if you guys haven't been there, go check it out.
Yeah, I've been there. I saw the Diamond Head came to one of the town council meetings, and they are working with STC. And I was wondering what the status was with other businesses and hotels and condo working with STC.
So my understanding is Diamond Head declined to sign the STC contract.
Was that before or after they came to town council and said that they were gonna be working with STC? Do you know? No?
No, ma'am. They are, I mean, they are doing things themselves. Having said that, I don't want to, shouldn't just leave it out like that. So they do have a game plan. Mr. Neal has laid out some different strategies for mitigating his light pollution, as well as putting some dunes out in front of his vendor equipment out there. So they are working to come into compliance, but my understanding is they are not moving forward with STC.
Okay. As of today, has there been any monetary violations given to businesses, homes, condos on the beach, or for sea turtle lighting?
Have there been any citations? Is that the question?
Citations or monetary fines given?
Yeah.
You don't know offhand how many?
No, ma'am.
What's a time frame? I'm just curious, what is the time frame from when you give once you lay eyes on the violation? What's the time frame from once you see a violation, sea turtle lighting violation, does a letter get sent out?
A letter, I can look through that with staff and get an answer to you on that.
Once a letter is being given out, is there a time frame that they have to rectify the situation before there's a monetary fine given?
Yeah, we generally, 5 days is kind of the a reasonable amount of time. To me, interior lights can be a little bit shorter, so that's just a flip of a switch. It all just depends on, statute calls for a reasonable amount of time, so whatever seems reasonable.
Right, thank you. So we can go on to the agenda B, Sunshine Law.
So if, Mr. Herron, are you?
Yeah, I'm here, Chad, and members of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity, at the request of staff, they, asked me to join today's meeting and to kind of go over the Sunshine Law, brief overview, in light of some recent communications and back and forth and conversations that I've had with staff regarding some of the actions of the Murph board. And as we go through this, I'll talk about those. But, I always start these types of discussions and presentations, if you will, by kind of just parroting the statute. So to speak, in order to kind of set the basics of what it is, what is the Sunshine Law, how does it work, et cetera. So let me start by saying that as a threshold issue, the Murph board members are subject to the Sunshine Law, notwithstanding the fact that you're volunteers in an advisory board in nature. The Florida Supreme Court has, in a series of cases, previously determined that boards or committees that are established by local governments, and certainly Murph falls within this category, that provide advisory work or information to the elected body, constitute boards for the purposes of compliance with the Sunshine Law. So what does that mean for you all? That means that whenever there are two or more Murph board members in any place, participating in an activity or just whatever, and it's foreseeable or actually starts to take place, that those two board members start having conversations or discussions about a matter that is foreseeable or that you all know is going to come before the board at some future point for action, you now have crossed over the Rubicon and are the subject to the Sunshine Law. And again, what does that mean? That means that in order for that discussion to comply with the Sunshine Law, that meeting has to have been noticed. The general public has to be given an opportunity to be present. The general public has the opportunity to comment on what you all might be discussing, and minutes of that meeting need to take place. In other words, just as you're meeting here today, right now, the formalities of that need to be observed. So kind of give an example that really applies directly to what you all do. If two or board members are at a pop-up activity, because we all know that you all are actively involved in that process, doesn't mean the Sunshine Law does not mean that two or more of you can't be there and participate in that pop-up activity at the same time, but you are prohibited from discussing anything that you all believe is foreseeable to come before the board, or likely to come before the board, or will come before the board at some future point. You can, talk about the pop-up and what's taking place at that moment, but that's the limit. And you can't talk about anything else or anything that relates to activities of the board as they may come before you. You can talk about things that took place in the past, as long as you believe and there's a reasonable certainty that what you've discussed in the past is not likely to then come back before you. Again, if it is, then you can't partake in that discussion. If for whatever reason a third party comes to two or more of the board members in a non-board meeting such as this, and starts to engage you all in discussions regarding an item that is likely to come before you, one of two things needs to take place. One of the two board members needs to interrupt that individual and say, "I'm sorry, but we can't discuss this matter because of the Sunshine Law, not because we don't necessarily want to talk to you about it, but we are bound by the Sunshine Law. Please refrain from engaging in that conversation," or alternatively, one of you can walk away and allow the other one to remain and have that interaction with that member of the public, and there's no violation of the Sunshine. But if two or more of you do stay and participate in that conversation, it is a violation of the Sunshine. Trust me, I know of specific instances where that exact situation has taken place. The activities were investigated by the state attorney for that particular county, not in Lee County, and other places, and actions were taken in order to there's civil penalties as well as potential criminal penalties that may arise as a result of the violation of the Sunshine Law. The more knowing and open the violation is, the greater the chances are that there are potential criminal charges filed. It's not common. It's actually the exception rather than the rule. But as I mentioned before, I do know of more than one occasion where the local state attorney has elected to bring criminal charges against either elected or appointed officials that have knowingly violated the Sunshine. How does that relate to the next issue that I want to talk about, which is your interaction with staff? The Sunshine Law says that it doesn't matter the means or methods of communicating with each other, it is prohibited. If it's a matter that is likely to come before the board at some future point, then you all are prohibited from engaging each other in discussions about that item outside of a public noticed meeting where the general public is given an opportunity to hear and participate in the discussion, and minutes of that meeting are kept. You cannot, let me emphasize, you cannot use third parties to circumvent the sunshine law, whether that's staff or a member of the public. And in fact, if that takes place and it's determined to have taken place, then that goes toward what I mentioned to you before about the culpability issue of, are you knowingly circumventing the sunshine law purposely? And what then potentially are the penalties that might be levied against you? There is an opportunity to remedy inadvertent violation of the sunshine by bringing the matter into the public eye and discussing them publicly. But again, that's the exception to the general rule, because the courts presume that you all are familiar with the sunshine law and that you all are observing the sunshine law. So while there is that remedial action that can take place, again, it's to be used sparingly, because it's assumed that you all are going to be following the sunshine law to begin with. So, you know, if you all say to either the town clerk or to Mr. Schutz, hey, can you distribute this information to so-and-so because I want their opinion on this item, on this issue, that is a violation of the sunshine law. Okay. There is a general exception. Actually, it's not a general, it's a very narrow exception where one-way emails about distributing potential information on a subject matter is allowable, but it has to be with a clear understanding that it is a one-way communication, that the person sending out that communication specifically states and indicates that they are not looking for return comments. If there is any such indication that there's a desire for return comments, again, that's a violation of the sunshine law. That is really a very general overview of the sunshine law. You know, as I said, I have mentioned a couple specific situations where the courts have said this is not allowed or this is allowed with limitations. And that's really how we all have to govern ourselves with respect to conducting the business of the board. I'll stop here to answer any questions that you may have at this point in time, and you know, expand upon the information that I've already provided.
So this is Jennifer. John, thank you. I just had a question. So in regards to, we had last meeting, we were discussing the Murph pamphlet, and I had requested or information to an input from other members to share with me to put into the pamphlet. And so am I understanding that they could have just directly sent me the documentation?
No.
For example, pictures.
Exactly the exact opposite. That is a prohibited communication. You cannot send an email either directly to the other board members or through staff soliciting input on something that's coming back before you.
So how would I get that input from other members?
At a meeting, just like this.
So they would.
So the email you would send an email theoretically to either Chad or the clerk saying, you know, I would like to have this discussion at the next meeting, and please inform the other board members to be ready to bring forth their ideas at the next meeting. That's it. And so then you would have this meeting like here today, and you all would discuss what should go in the pamphlet. You can't do it outside a public meeting.
No, I'm not talking about discussion. I'm talking about the actual documentation or pictures.
No, that's not it. It's discussion, pictures. What are your suggestions? The law, the sunshine law, is intended and has been applied purposely, very liberal, to be all-encompassing.
So if
There are very narrow exceptions, and the courts have specifically stated they are to be narrowly interpreted and applied. Whenever in doubt, you are supposed to go the exact opposite way, which is presume that it's a potentially prohibited communication, and it should be left to a public meeting.
So a member sending pictures to Chad and asking to share with the rest of the committee, and him forwarding that on to the rest of the committee is breaking sunshine law.
Yes, ma'am.
But aren't all the emails public? Isn't that making it?
Doesn't matter. There's a difference between the sunshine law and the public records law, and they are not co-equal.
So the way I'm reading the law and the way that you said it multiple times, it says anything that will come up in the foreseeable future in any meetings. So,
Yes.
so we're allowed to talk about past things, but if we think the color blue is going to come up in the future, we can't ever discuss that.
You can never discuss the color blue. And that's the problem with even those one-way communications or discussions about past actions. Unless you know that there's zero likelihood that it will ever come back before you, my advice to you is err on the side of caution and leave the discussion to a public meeting.
So with our public meetings, if we want to get anything done, such as a pamphlet, which is a good example, if we put it on one committee member like we did with Jen, that pretty much means she's on her own except for the few hours that we're here once a month to do it together. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, I mean, I can understand this with certain things, but when it comes to the nature of the beast with nature and how things change so rapidly and quickly, it almost feels like this is set up purposefully to not get anything done.
And you may be right in that perception. But that is what the laws and the Florida Supreme Court and the Florida legislature have told us of how we have to conduct ourselves when doing public business. I don't like it any more than you do necessarily, and I don't necessarily disagree with you that the system is designed to be to slow down the process. I can only think that maybe that was the intent of the Florida legislature when they created these laws. But it is the law and we have to follow it.
So if we want to talk about a matter that's already been brought to the public, such as, because it's talking about, you said it, and then I'm looking at the law here, it's talking about foreseeable upcoming things that that haven't been brought before yet. So the color blue, let's say we talked about the color blue in the last meeting. The way that I'm interpreting it and the way that you kind of explained it, we could talk about the color blue now because it's already been brought before everyone. But then,
unless there's a belief or foreseeable belief that will come back before you.
but it's already before us. Like the pamphlet's another good example. We've been looking at the pamphlet for a while. We know that it's already in front of us, and we know it's already going to be discussed. So if we're trying to help each other, like I made a mock pamphlet
I'll
for
stop
Jen.
you right there. I'll stop you. I cannot. I'm trying to make my answer as direct as possible. If you're still working on it, it is foreseeable it's going to come back, and therefore you cannot discuss it outside of a public meeting.
Well, I'm just trying to get the idea of what you mean by foreseeable and if it's before us.
Foreseeable, so just so we're clear, foreseeable in all these cases, the court has said, you know what, whenever in doubt, you need to be as cautious and err on the side of that this is potentially a violation of the Sunshine Law whenever possible, because there's no bringing it back, so to speak. If a violation of the Sunshine takes place, except in very narrow circumstances, I mentioned before, you can't undo that. And the courts have said that's wrong. Okay, so you all have to police yourselves to some degree and think about, is this going to come back before us at some future point? And if you have any belief that the answer to that question is yes, even 1% in the back of your mind, then you should err on the side of caution and not discuss it publicly.
Okay.
Now, let's go back to the issue of the pamphlet or so once it's finished, once you all discussed it over 6 months, a year, however long it takes, and it's finished and it's published, you run into another board member at, I don't know, a fundraising event, and you all can then talk about, that's a damn good job that we did on that pamphlet. I can't believe how good of a job it ended up being. I can't tell you how many comments I've received from the public that this is a great thing. All those are past tense. Do you understand and see the distinction?
Yes. I do have a question, though, John, about when I went to the first abatement board meeting, and we had a discussion about sunshine laws, and I had, after the meeting, came up to you, and this was when I was first starting the Murph pop-up, and I
Yes.
said that I had asked you, how do I make communication to see with the other Murph members? How do I get the pop-up calendar to them? How do I ask them if they want to participate? And what I recall is that you said you cannot directly ask them. You can send the calendar and the request for participation to Chad or your liaison, and then they can forward that on. So
And it would get filled out, and the pop-up through staff would then be staffed according to that schedule. Okay, but once you are there at the pop-up, the rule about not discussing items still applies. So the email that you're talking about scheduling attendance of Murph board members at the pop-up is a one-way communication. It gets filled out, and then staff is responsible for then telling each individual board member without you're supposed to be there at this time, you're supposed to be there at this time. In a perfect world, there wouldn't be any overlap between board members. There wouldn't be two board members at the Murph pop-up at the same time in order to try and avoid this type of situation occurring on a recurring basis. I understand that there's some practical difficulties there, and sometimes there's still an inherent, and there's nothing in the sunshine law that doesn't say that two or board members can't get together on social events, and if you're friends or you run into each other at the grocery store, but you can't talk while you're interacting in that social forum or that social setting. You still have to be aware of and comply with the sunshine law and not discuss any item that is foreseeably to come before you or that you all might have to take action on. And I know that that's hard. Believe me, I know. But again, I don't necessarily I've not made up these rules. The Florida legislature has, the Florida courts have, and they've said we got to strictly comply with it.
So just to be clear, if I have a calendar, a pop-up calendar, and I can send a schedule to Chad, and then he will send it to other committee members, they will then fill it out and then send it back to Chad, and then Chad would send it back to me, correct?
Correct. So in that type of scenario, Chad would have the individual responses. He should send this. And one of the best ways in the type of situation like that is to send items by for example, when I send emails to the entire city council or the town council, I'm sorry, as a general rule, I blind copy them and also include a CC, the clerk, the manager and whoever may be the department head that is involved in the item that I'm emailing the council on. And so even if there's a reply all, hitting the button reply all, it's just only going to come back to staff, not to the other board members. And so that's a way to avoid inadvertent violation of the Sunshine Law. And Chad would have those individual results. He'd then compile it, and create the schedule of manning the pop-up booth, and inform each individual member, this is your time, and whether or not he has it, or then forwards a copy to you or the other members. That's fine. Again, one of the key characteristics of this type of communication is it's not talking about the schedule, of a foreseeable matter that's going to come before you. You already said we're having a pop-up on this date. You voted to have that pop-up on that date, and you have presumptively at that same public meeting instructed Chad, hey Chad, make an inquiry of the individual members to see what is their availability to man the pop-up booth during the time that it's operating. Okay, now we're talking about past tense.
Okay, but the pop-up is an ongoing thing. It's not something that comes up in a Murph meeting, except for when it comes to budget. So this is not something that's coming up in a meeting. So I would think that.
Hold on, stop. It should. You all, should not be doing a blanket. We're going to have the Murph pop-up whenever I or that person or staff person decides. You all should adopt a schedule of when the pop-ups are going to take place. Okay, and then staff it accordingly. You've now voted to have the pop-up on a recurring basis on these dates, 6 months out. And now, Mr. Schutz, can you please assist us in soliciting individually from the individual board members their availability on each and every one of these dates for them to participate and man the pop-up booth. Again, now we're talking about past tense.
Is it possible to do an ordinance that we would vote on to where we could specify specific things such as pop-ups or brochures where we would be allowed to discuss them?
No, there's no such exemption.
Okay, so if that's the case,
under the Sunshine Law, as much as I'd like to say, yeah, we could do that. That's not a recognized statutory exemption to the Sunshine Law.
okay, so if that's the case, then if we wanted to have a public meeting outside of our normal Murph meetings once a month, how much notice does the public need to know that we are going to be meeting about the brochure or the color blue or whatever we're discussing? That way it can be more frequently than once a month.
The general rule, as interpreted by the Attorney General's office, is that no less than 48 hours, and that time frame is of 40 hours or potentially less, is only for emergency situations.
So what constitutes as an emergency?
Well, a declared emergency, a hurricane, in this case of under certain circumstances, responses to COVID-19. But if you're just like, well, let's get together the day after tomorrow to talk about this, no.
Why is that?
That's why we have these meetings once a month on a regular schedule. They get noticed. They're placed on the town's calendar in order to comply with the Sunshine Law. There are exemptions, but as a general rule, the minimum notice that has to be provided is 48 hours, according to the Attorney General. And in such situations, they have stated really should be reserved for emergency situations.
So it's not a law that it has to be an emergency. It's just preferred.
Yeah, I don't think that we want to put ourselves in the position of ending up in court and trying to say that your emergency isn't, that your idea of what an emergency is or isn't one that's recognized by the Attorney General.
But I don't see the word emergency anywhere in here for those types of meetings, those pop-up meetings, if you will.
Okay. If you want to propose that to your board, that's your prerogative, and you all can vote on it. And I'm sitting here and telling you, as the town attorney, that's wrong.
So if we decided to have our main meeting once a month and wanted to go and do a discussion meeting that is also on, I mean, I haven't talked about this to anybody, but I'm just trying to find out, like, we're kind of in a box here where we can't get anything done at less once a month, but hypothetically, maybe Jen does need help with writing something up for the pamphlet. So that's not an emergency. No one's life's in danger, but she's on a time crunch potentially because of whether it's budget or whether the printer or whatever reason. So what's to say, we could potentially have on the schedule that everyone knows about ahead of time to where we would come in and do that. And the simple thing would be it would be on the website if it's canceled and we don't need it.
You have just answered your own question. You vote to have more regular meetings. And you say for the next 6 months, we're going to meet twice a month.
Okay.
We're going to meet every day, every week. Now, I can't speak for staff if they have the capacity and availability to fulfill that idea, but that's what you would do. You would vote at a public meeting to have more regular meetings. Again, you've provided notice of the meeting, it's scheduled, there's minutes being taken, the public has the opportunity to comment on it. And then if that's the will of the Murph board and that fits with the availability of staff and our facilities to accommodate those more frequent meetings, then they get scheduled. But the proper process would be to have it on the agenda at a regularly scheduled meeting for discussion, and then those then become regularly scheduled meetings, not emergency meetings.
So this sort of thing could just go on as an agenda item, and we note different times, but could we have a working process where we're all working on it together here in this venue at this time? And maybe have it be the only agenda item for that particular meeting. That would give it a solid 2 hours for 7 people to work cooperatively together in one place where your eyes are on, your ears are on the same information.
Yes, ma'am. That is perfectly consistent with the Sunshine Law and how it should work. And you schedule those meetings in advance. You give notice and you have them. And if it's a single subject meeting to allow you to focus on just the brochure, then yeah. I mean, I have seen in every jurisdiction I've worked, including the town, where the schedule is a single subject matter discussion.
So one more question for me, then I'll stop coming at you, John. I'm sorry if it seems like I am.
Right.
I feel like this might have come up because I was trying to get the brochure that I kind of made up to Jen, and I sent it to Chad to send to everybody because I thought that was within. I'm still learning the political side of everything. So I sent this to Chad to send to everybody. He said he can't do that because of Sunshine Law. So then I started reading up on it and getting much better with it. So was this what kind of stemmed this discussion, or is there anything else we should be aware of that brought this up?
No, it's been the series of recent emails related to the flyer, the pamphlet, however we characterize it, among other things. But it's primarily been this back and forth emailing and using Chad as essentially the intermediary. And as I said before, that is not allowed. That, you know, the use of intermediaries to share information with other board members outside of a public meeting is not only discouraged, but is actually illegal.
Okay. For projects such as this, then, like what Wendy and I are talking
Just
about.
period. On any item, again, that's
Well, I mean,
foreseeable to
like-
come before the board.
I mean, in the future, like if we have a big
Yeah, yeah.
project, like
No,
a
I
pamphlet.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
now, as a side note, you know, I generally have, you know, these types of discussions with each new board member, or copies of the materials that I've previously put together, and that the town clerk has is given to new advisory board members. In the case of the actual elected officials, there's actually state statute that mandates they have to take no less than 4 hours a year in ethics training, which generally speaking, the 4-hour course includes a discussion on the Sunshine Law and Public Records Law. There's absolutely no prohibition that you all couldn't sign up for that. It's pretty much, it's given pretty regularly by the Florida League of Cities online. You all don't have to necessarily take it, but you know, if you want to learn a little bit more and hear from others about how they characterize and they talk about things such as like the Sunshine Law, ethics, statutes, public records law, that's always available to you if you want. Or you know, or I had maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, had a training session that covered a lot of those different subjects, and notice was sent out to I think all the board members. It was not heavily attended, I might add, but you know, I do that type of training and these types of discussions on an as needed basis, and there was you know, based upon these exchanges of emails, staff was starting to grow concerned, and they asked me to be here today to give this overview. And I'll follow up with an email that's a little bit more formal that cites to some of the cases, and you know, using the language of the Attorney General. There's actually a booklet that is put out each year by the Florida Attorney General's office. It's generally called the Florida Sunshine Manual. It's accessible online. I have it as an item on my desktop because I refer to it a lot as a reference tool. And it's where I gain, you know, when I write these kinds of emails I mentioned to you before, that's where I gain a lot of that information, because it is very easy for me to quote directly from time to time as to what the actual courts have said, or the actual Attorney General, which are generally the entities that are the ones responsible for interpreting and applying these laws, in which I, as a local government attorney, generally follow, because they are the source, so to speak, on these issues.
I had a question. How does town council receive all their information?
Same way. It generally is funneled through either the manager's office or the city clerk's or the town clerk's office, almost exclusively. And again, you know, the general comment or observation is, do not, you know, if you want to respond, please make sure that you do not use the reply all button. As I mentioned to you before, in my particular instance, the way I address that particular issue is just by blind copying the board members.
So if one council member would like to, you know, send some information to another or to the rest of the council members, they actually have to wait until the next meeting as well. They can't communicate with the town manager for the town manager then to relay that information to the other.
They can ask us to disseminate the information, but we cannot then go beyond that and just being the disseminator of the information. The actual discussion about that matter has to wait until it's discussed at a public meeting.
So how is that different from a member asking to relay a picture or information asking a town staff member to relay some content to other members. How is that different from,
Because my understanding, ma'am, is that
It's not a
that email said, please provide me with your thoughts. Please tell me what you think about this. You send me your photos that you would like. That is prohibited. A one-way communication, singularly and specifically saying, I'm providing this information, do not respond, is, again, a permissible but frowned upon way of complying, of getting that information out there. The Attorney General's office has said, we frown upon these types of communications. You really should wait until there's a publicly noticed meeting to have these discussions and to share this information.
I guess where my confusion is we had the discussion in last meeting on what we needed for the pamphlet. Everyone had said, okay, I will send, I believe it was Dr. Fossen. I believe he said he had pictures of birds, and he said he would send them to Chad to then send to me. So
Then who, then,
the discussion was already made, if the discussion was already made within a meeting, and the request was to then send it to a staff member to then forward it on when the discussion had already been made during the last meeting.
Yeah, and then who's making the decision to incorporate that, or, can you send me a better picture, or, what are your thoughts? It's that back and forth that is prohibited.
So I have someone.
And then, hold on, let me finish. The scenario that you're giving, the way that you framed that communication invites that discussion and that back and forth. And that is where the courts have said, you can't do that. A one-way singular communication out, this is what I think this should look like, and we'll discuss it at the next meeting, period. Nothing wrong with that. But if this, give me your thoughts, send me your photos, that's inviting a response.
I disagree.
And you cannot have that response. You cannot have that. That's a discussion, whether it's simply photos or, hey, I think that's a good idea. That's discussing something that's foreseeably to come before your board for action.
I see. Another question in regards, you said something in regards to a 6-month plan for the pop-up or schedule to send to the town. That was figuratively, right? I can do it month to month?
Okay, is there a schedule, or
There's
is
a
this
schedule,
an ad hoc decision?
There's a
it's-
schedule that there's a schedule that I make once a month.
Okay. Have you been delegated by the board? Has the board voted? You have the singular authority to set the schedule. If not, it needs to be voted upon.
I mean, this was over a year ago, but I'm pretty sure that was the case, yes.
Okay. Then if you've been delegated that singular responsibility, then that's on you. And you, as I said, to the extent that you then ask for board members as to when they might be available to help staff that particular pop-up on that particular month, that one-way communication through Chad is acceptable. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
I believe that's the way we've been handling it, so thank you.
I just need an example. So I have a photographer's information that I need to get to Jen. And this is real, I really do. How do I get that to her?
Well, do you have that information now?
I do, but I don't know if telling everyone this photographer's private information is a good idea.
There's
it's gonna be public.
this is we're guys. This is the fundamental difficulty that we're having. There are no private discussions in government.
It's not a private discussion. It's just, I don't know if this private person wants her phone number out for everyone.
Well, if she's gonna be a part of the pamphlet, then that's gonna have to be public knowledge anyhow, so.
Oh, her private, okay.
I'm sorry, sir, did she send you her information by email?
The photographer, no.
Okay. So, because to your point before, it's a public record. It's already out there.
Mm-hmm. So I could have her send it to me email and then I get it to Chad?
Yep, and,
Okay.
and Chad could then forward it on to where, but that's the process, and it's all, or you can disclose it now, or at the next meeting. I mean, it's the idea here, so you all understand. And again, it's not me. The idea is that transparency, openness is what government should be striving for, according to the Florida legislature and the courts as they've interpreted the Sunshine Law. And any attempt to avoid that openness, that's or transparency, is one, likely to be illegal, and two, strongly discouraged. It's the exact opposite that we should be striving for, according to the Florida legislature and the courts of the state of Florida.
So if a member.
I'm not. Again, please understand that I am just the conduit of this information. Okay, I'm conveying to you what has already been said. This is not. I'm trying to make this as much objectively about what has already been said by and what the law actually reads. So what I'm telling you has a very little of my, what I would call personal opinion, or someone might become personal opinion. I'm just relaying to you what the law actually says, how it's been interpreted by the Florida courts and the Attorney General.
I think I understand. I just want to, be very clear. So, Rob had just said that he had some contact information for me. So it is okay for him to send that contact information to Chad, and then Chad can forward that information on to me. And that's not breaking the Sunshine Law.
No.
Or he could tell you here.
It's just, that's a one-way communication. You can't then ask Chad, can you ask Rob if she's willing to work for us or work with us? Okay. That then has to be a discussion that takes place at a public meeting.
I feel like it's so open to interpretation, this whole thing. Like, I'm reading through it and I'm hearing you guys. And so when I wanted to send Jen over the pamphlet that I worked on, I didn't want anything back. She asked for help. I made up a pamphlet and I emailed it to Chad to give to her. There wasn't going to be any further discussion until the next meeting about what we were going to think. I just don't understand how that was against it.
So what you need to do is, everyone who may have contributed or suggested modifications sends all that material to Chad. Chad puts it in your agenda and you go through it at a public meeting. I don't understand how that's hard to grasp and follow.
Because I was hoping she would get it early so she could take it to the printer so they could get an idea of what we're thinking of if it was something she wanted.
Again, speed and expediency are not the concern of the Sunshine Law. As hard as that is difficult for me to understand and agree with, I'm not the one who's, it's like, and I do not mean this in a flippant way in any form or fashion, but in the eyes of the Sunshine Law, its response is, so what?
So
The Sunshine Law here is not intended to make your job easier. In fact, as I think we're all agreeing, in many respects, it makes things harder and longer to do because of these requirements that have to be followed. Again, it's not me, it is what the law says.
So the bottom line is, Rob can hand this mock-up to Jennifer right now. Is that correct? Because it's
if it's available to everyone and there's copies available to the general public, yes.
okay.
I have a question with the, many years ago, there were two town council members, I'm sure you're aware of this, that were caught at a local establishment speaking on town council agenda items or potential?
Ma'am, my understanding is they weren't caught. It was before my time, and the matter was investigated, and there was a determination that there was not a sunshine violation.
Yes, and why is that? Do you know?
You would have to ask the state attorney's office.
Okay.
They're the ones who, and that, as I understand, investigated the matter properly so, and determined that no sunshine law violation had occurred. I'm sure you can, if you're, and I again don't mean this in a flippant or facetious manner. If you really want to know, make a public records request to the state attorney's office for their file on the matter.
And I have a question.
I can't speak for them. It'd be way outside my authority or even my knowledge to even venture a guess as to how they reached or how that office reached that conclusion. And I'm not saying it's right, wrong or right. Again, it would be inappropriate for me to suggest otherwise. They are the entity under the state law given responsibility for prosecuting, for lack of a description, potential violations of the Sunshine Law. That's their job.
Go ahead, Rose.
You have a question,
I
Rose?
do have a question. This is Rose Larkin. First, I'd like to say I'm very familiar with Sunshine Law. Not only did I work for the school district of Lee County for over 30 years, but I also served on a statewide education board, during which time, at least 3 of those years that I was on the board, I contacted all the directors of exceptional student education around the state, and there's one for each of the 67 counties. I also was in contact with literally hundreds of employees through school districts around the state, and I've also served for a year on an advisory board to the Department of Education in Tallahassee. So I'm very familiar with this. My question, though, is with this one-way emails, what happens when it doesn't work? For example, I sent pictures for the pamphlet, 4 pictures of dune vegetation to Chad on June 9th. And so then on June 13th, I received an email from Chad that was Dr. Fossum's bird pictures. He had sent them out to everyone, and it was forwarded so I could see that Dr. Fossum had sent his request to send the pictures to Jennifer on June 12th. So I was the 9th, he was the 12th. His pictures got sent out the 13th. So I am at the pop-up frequently. Normally I'm representing the Master Gardener volunteers of Lee County, but anyway, I was there on June 18th, and I asked Jennifer Rusk if she had received any information from me through Chad. It was a yes and no question, there wasn't a discussion, and she said no. So that very afternoon, I wrote back to Chad to say this was the exact ineffective communication that was pointed out back at the May meeting, the May 11th meeting, because it was discussed then, that things are not consistently distributed. So then my big question, he sent me an email on June 20th saying I needed to discuss communication. But my question is there preferential treatment for some people? Is there discrimination against how emails are being forwarded? I mean, there was no discussion. There was no discussion in the emails. I have them all copied. It was just send this information to Jennifer Rusk, the end. So my question is not really the process. It's more like what happens when the process breaks down?
Well, and I'll try and answer it. There are really a couple separate but related issues there. Again, kind of what I had said before, to the extent that there's a third party out there who may have received information from different sources, including members, and then sent it out. That potentially is a sunshine violation, as I said before. If it's acknowledged, well, I got this information from this person, I got this information from that person, and so if that's happening, then I will get with staff to make sure that we have a communication with someone who inadvertently finds themselves in that situation. Say, hey, you shouldn't be having these communications. It may be an issue. Better way to do it is just forward it to us will be as we're talking about here, the source of collection and then distribution from there. As far as what then happens, it gets to staff, and how it gets then put on or distributed to the board as a whole. There are a number of different factors, and Chad can speak to them himself, but such thing as workload. Chad, I know, as I'm sure you all know, is very busy. He's at town hall every day doing his job, which is not necessarily limited to being the liaison for Murph. Okay. So there may be issues of timing, there may be issues of capacity, of work capacity, and the ability to promptly respond. So I think there's probably some of that. And at the end of the day, again, let me reiterate, I think that the best course of conduct is to then compile as a staff, compile all that information, put it on an agenda at a regular scheduled meeting for discussion. And there may be time lag there that may affect that distribution. So that's my educated guess, is those two factors may be significant contributors to the your comment of potentially lack of turnaround or length of time that it might take. If, for example, Chad receives the material of some materials that are regarding an item that you all are going to discuss next month. He gets it next week. So there's 3 weeks he's likely, or 2.5 weeks, he's holding on to that material before putting it in the agenda that gets then distributed to you all for you all to see, and then come to the meeting next month and talk about it. So I think that's, give me a moment here. Hello?
Well, he's busy. I was thinking maybe we should
Yes.
request just an idea from town council or from John, maybe a workshop in the near future
I agree.
with other board members and committees. And we're a very active committee, and
Yeah.
we're all volunteers. We work really hard,
I've already accepted the
and
invitation.
we want.
Oh my God.
We're not here to break any laws. We want to do well, and
I think in our emails from now on, because to make it so there's no question, let's continue sending. I'm going to ask him about it. Why not? Just,
No, you all sent out the invite.
But then at the end
That's
say
my
we
point.
don't want to
I
respond.
responded to Mr.
We
Otto's
just want this
request.
to be sent out because it's public knowledge.
Yes.
So like this
and copied.
and copy.
Okay.
So we know whether or not that information was.
You're welcome.
So because if we specifically state, because he.
I'm sorry, everyone. So I know that you may have already moved on. So that is kind of my answer to that particular question about timing. And there certainly is that I'm aware of any particular intent or desire to exclude or favor one versus another. That's not how, in my experiences over the last 5 years as the town attorney, that's how town staff works. So, but I can only speak for myself.
So for moving forward, something that I think we're going to do when we send an email to Chad that we want everyone involved in, like pictures, or if we ask Chad to add something to the agenda, instead of leaving it up for, oh, you could have wanted a discussion or you could have wanted an answer back, we're just going to flat out say that we don't want a discussion. This is something we're just putting out there for the group for the next time, or however you want to do it. Like, this picture needs to go to Jen. I don't want a response. If we just put it out there that we don't want a response, period, is that all you need to know that it's?
No, again, this is kind of, yes, one-way conversations or emails are those type of communications that are acceptable is here's an article on bioluminescence, um, uh, water based plant bioluminescence that is adversely affected by red tide. Want everyone to have this a copy of this information. I think it's pertinent to the functions of Murph. Okay, that's an article. Sending an email with photographs of something that you are asking Chad to share or to specifically send to another board member for them to then consider and potentially include in something that you all are voting and working on is a discussion. It's not, I want you to see these photos. Why wouldn't you just simply send a set of photos without a context? I want you to see these photos of the sun, of the sunset on Fort Myers Beach. That again doesn't make sense. If the purpose of that communication is to convey information about something that is foreseeable to come before the board for action, the way to do that is to send it to Chad and say, Mr. Schutz, can you please make sure that this item and these photographs are placed on the next agenda when this comes up for discussion?
I have another question. If I ask for something that's already in a town ordinance to be forwarded to the members so that they would have access to it prior to a meeting, is that something that he can do?
Again, yeah, that's
Already a town ordinance.
again, I mean, again, it's you know, an email from Chad saying, please be aware that section or chapter 9, article 2, division 8 of the town code is going to be discussed at the next meeting. Here's a link to it, period. Yes, that obviously then becomes part of the agenda as well, because discussion without it being actually part of the agenda doesn't, or the backup materials doesn't make sense. But conceivably, yes, that would be a permissible a request of staff. But, indicating in that email for you to convey that, and when Chad sends that email with that link, that please inform the board members that I intend on raising this section of the code as a discussion item, that's prohibited.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for John? Well, thank you so much for taking time out to answer questions for us and give us a little information. I would suggest that maybe you talk to Roger, town manager, and maybe see about having some workshop, maybe in the near future or next year for committee members and board members, so we can.
One last comment, just to I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point this out. A workshop, which the town council has, we call them M&P, is for discussion purposes only. You cannot take formal action at a workshop.
I think she's getting.
So if you want to discuss and take action on something, then the proper thing to do would, again, let's have a meeting 2 weeks from now, so we can discuss this in a workshop discussion and a public meeting at which board action and recommendations can be taken.
I see. All right. Well, thank you so much, John.
Anytime. We're here. I hope that you all took this in the way that I intended to be, which is informational and to assist you all. If there is any question, either ask Chad or Amy, or reach out to me directly for help. That's what I'm here for. It's to help you all. And the idea again, I want to make this clear, is to make sure that we all are following the law and we're not getting into trouble. And that's the
Absolutely.
last thing I want to happen.
Right. I believe none of us want to break the law. We're an active committee. We are very hard workers. We're volunteers. We're stewards of our community, and we do not come here. We don't take so much of our time to come here to break the law. So we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay.
Okay, so on to the next item, unless there's a further discussion? No? Okay, so on to the next item, and that is
So if I can just interrupt before you start, I need to take care of some business, and if I can just remind you, 4 o'clock, administrative staff needs to be somewhere. Oh, all right, thank you.
Okay, so C, Murph budget, FY 22, 15 minutes.
Okay, and we just got it, so.
Yes,
Now we can discuss.
now we can discuss.
$10,000 is a pretty healthy budget, I think, isn't it?
Yes, and so we have 3,000 allocated for pamphlets. I don't really have I don't
don't
see where
see
it's
that at
allocated
all.
on here.
Like, where did you
The
go?
expenditure, I don't see. Okay, so, but if we recall, so 3,000 for pop-up outreach program, 4,000 for, what do we call it, base or main Murph things, and
Committee items.
So,
and then
Mike-
3,000 for the pamphlet.
okay, so this is spent to date from this calendar year of January through now currently, or is this from the beginning of the pop-up? Oh, it says starting balance 21, 22, but doesn't say a month. So I don't know.
Where do you see 21?
In the very top left corner, it
Oh,
says.
okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
FY
sorry, sorry.
20 Yeah, 21, 22 starting
Fiscal
balance, but
year
I'm not sure. So I'm thinking that could have been the original balance, but that, I'm not sure where, then that says to the 10, which, that's possible. Community Foundation had donated money as well as the Kiwanis Club. But then there's no, like, when were these items purchased? There's dates, okay, there's dates in here when they were purchased, but the dates here start in November. So, but we're looking at the budget year then of October through this October? Is that how their calendar budget year runs?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So, these are the expenses so far, which seem incredibly low, but then,
We didn't do the pamphlet though, so that
right.
some of that was supposed to be for that, right, Jen?
Then the flashlights aren't listed.
They're there. They're
Yeah, they're there.
about halfway down.
Oh.
It says Amazon. Besides,
Oh, but they're way over on the right. Okay, committee items, under committee items, sorry.
But we have FMB logo tent for 705. We never received a logo tent.
Maybe it's just tent.
Not
much-
for $705. We received a quote for a tent with a logo, but we never purchased it or received it. So that is incorrect.
And there's nothing about the tables or the table covers or the banner for the tent. There
Yeah,
seems like there's a
for
lot of
the-
missing items.
Okay, with the new banner for the tent?
Well, where's the old banner?
I don't see that. I believe that old banner was purchased,
But it's the second banner. The original one was in April of last year, so there was a banner that was purchased that's newer.
Well, $1,000 was just spent the end of June, June 27th. It just says pop-up supplies. Could that be included under pop-up supplies?
No, because that new
From
banner that's
Amazon?
now obsolete is, because of the new lettering of Murph, has been around for months. So no.
And the logo's separate from the logo tent is separate from the banner.
Yes.
Right. Logo intent. Yeah, this FMB logo tent was not part of it. So I will get with Amy.
I have more questions for Chad.
And there's only $20 have been spent on Seashell pamphlets and pics and probably the shorebirds and that. They've started charging for copies, but there's another thing of copies for $4, one for $30, in-house.
Well,
And there's
those
40
copies
up
of
there.
Seashell pamphlets
Okay.
also, you can see the copies 200 double-sided. Those are basically the same Seashell pamphlet pics.
Okay.
Pop-up supplies app. Yeah, so maybe,
And so the difference between where are Seashell pics being used for printing that are outside of the pop-up? Because see, the first column is pop-up, and the second one is printing expenses for something, like the fertilizer cards, although there are some at the pop-up. They were to be distributed to companies or individuals.
yeah, so Seashell pamphlets should be under pop-up. $20, and just like the $40, double-sided. Let's see. The committee items, flashlights, that's correct. Laminating pouches, that is actually correct. The business card printing paper, that is correct. And the FMB logo tent is not correct. And the $20 printing fee for the 3,000 should be moved over to the pop-up. Okay. I have in the process of ordering a new Murph banner with fast signs, and it has basically the words Murph and our if you know our steward and our stewardship saying, our motto. So I'll have that on the banner with the town approved logo. That will go through the process of Jenny, and she will approve it and put in the order. I also have put in an order for 4 prints for a wraparound valance. It goes around the valance of a 10 by 10 tent with Velcro that has the words Marine Environmental Resource Task Force with the town logo on either side, and that wraps around the whole tent. I just wanted to let you know that. That's not on here. Let's see, I know we're going to be discussing the pamphlet, but in regards to the budget, the fiscal year 2022 budget, I would ask that if we do not spend the whole 3,000 on the pamphlets before fiscal year 2023, that we reallocate any leftover money from the pamphlet for this year to go towards outreach, which would be
Like
Marine
carryover, so we'd have 13 next.
They don't carry over. They don't carry over that money, but could be able to spend that money before the end of fiscal year 2022.
Like
So-
microscopes or something would be cool for the outreach programs and that.
Yes.
Like those kind of things. Okay.
So if we can't get this pamphlet done and printed in time, we could reallocate any money from that 3,000 and move it over, if you all agree, to outreach that we could probably then spend before fiscal year 2023 starts.
Do we need to make a motion for that?
Yes.
If you'd like.
I would like to make a motion that we use the 3,000 for the pamphlet to then be allocated to outreach programs instead and use I'm trying to think it out as I say.
Yeah, so I would probably say, because we still have time for
Okay.
the pamphlet, and we still are looking
Yeah, but
into graphic designers and we.
Right, but with everything we just went through and how long it's gonna take, I mean, not that we don't want the pamphlet sooner rather than later, but just by the way it's been seeming, maybe not put it on the back burner by any means, keep working on it, but then, because when does the fiscal year start?
We're gonna be going,
Town council's voting, I thought, in October.
So we still have a
We
few
really
months.
need to, if it's already August, September only gives us
So
2 months to have it done.
I'd say get it done and then printed after October for the next budget.
let's
yeah.
just keep it maybe as a discussion right now, because then we'll have more members next month, and then we can maybe move a motion, and then we'll see, give us a month to see where we are with the pamphlets.
How do you feel about it? I know
We're still we're jumping ahead because the pamphlets is on agenda item E, so I will give you more information on where we are with the pamphlets.
Well, I guess, because I feel it's relevant. Do you feel like something could happen? You could just say yes or no. Do you feel like something could happen with that 3,000 for the pamphlets beforehand?
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's all.
So maybe we
So, yeah,
just
we'll
keep
wait
it as a
then.
discussion and put it on the agenda, the Murph budget, fiscal year 2022 for next meeting,
Well,
if we all agree.
we could also use that 3,000 from committee items for the printing of the pamphlet, couldn't we? I mean, it seems like they've kind of moved things back and
I
forth.
really don't think we're gonna get the printing done in this fiscal year. We still have to go through I have a rough draft of what the pamphlet is the Murph pamphlet will be. I have asked a few graphic designers for their input and quotes, and I believe I have found one. And then I have to bring that draft back to the committee and for all of you to look at and put in and give your input during a meeting.
Isn't
and
this
then-
something that we could get copies of right now and look at when we get?
I'm going to share that once we get to the pamphlet portion of it. And then the graphic designer will have a draft for us next month. And then if we all approve it next month, then that needs to go to town council. Town council then needs to look it over, approve it, and then it goes to the town staff before we can go into print. So I don't think we're gonna make the timeline, considering the first week of September is basically it for us. So our next meeting in September, not our next meeting, but our September meeting is after the fiscal year cutoff for 2022. So that's why I'd like to keep it just as a discussion, if you're all in agreement with keeping the Murph budget 2022 and put that on the agenda for next meeting.
You have a better handle on where the pamphlet is, so if you say you can handle another month, hold off another month before we make that decision, then yeah. And I also think for sake of time anyway, we should probably hold off both budget talks until the next meeting.
I agree.
Yeah, because
Do we need to move a motion to do that, or we can just?
I'll motion for it anyway. I motion to continue both budget talks for 22 and year 23 to the next meeting.
And I second it.
All right, so we're moving on to Murph Pamphlet. Okay.
Here's what I made up for you. I'm going to hand this to you. I'm also going to give you the information of Anya Trepper, who is one of the owners of the Banana Bay Tour Company. She's a professional photographer. I will tell you her information right now.
This has to actually be shared with everybody, so I'll
It-
look at it. And
Chad has it, and he's going to send it out to everyone, he said. So, yeah. So I am getting Anya's info.
I have a presentation,
Ooh,
unless anyone has a question in regard to it, but I do have a presentation for the pamphlet, and I believe the projector, hopefully. I've got the projector on.
while they're doing that, do you want me to tell you this to write down, or?
Do you want me to give you a piece of paper to write it down on for?
Well, I thought I had to say it out loud.
No. you
Oh, then just give me back what I just handed you, Jan. I'll write it on that.
Eva, may I use a projector? Thank you.
Yeah, there's her information for all kinds of wildlife pictures.
Eva, I think I left a quote in Amy's office. If there's a way that someone can get me that. Okay, so here is a rough draft of what I did for the pamphlet, and please excuse, I'm not the greatest at pamphlet designing. This is going to be a 6-fold. This is going to be a 6-fold. You can see, so basically, you're gonna have it just like this. Can you see? Thank you, Eva. So if you can see,
Front and back then?
so basically if we turn it around, it starts with number 1. So each panel is numbered, and if you have any requests as I'm going through, please refer to panel number. So you might, so this would be the opening. This is, so first of all, I spoke with a few different graphic designers, and this is the one that I believe we should go with. They've all been highly recommended, and one was for $2,500, although we would own that and be able to choose who we have printing the pamphlet. This one came back at $500. We would still own it. I don't know if you can see that. But it says terms, let's see, Jennifer Rest, Town of Fort Myers Beach, Murph brochure, scope, fulfill, design, look, and feel for a tabloid folded brochure. Brochure 17 by 11, folded poster size brochure, design, produce and release, final resolution PDF, $500, so we would own it. This gentleman, one of the reasons why I like this graphic designer is they came highly recommended, but they also worked and did all of our beach access signs. So, let me actually, can you hand me my phone?
Yep.
If you're not familiar with our beach access signs, which I'm sure you all are, I thought they were really well done. And so this is the gentleman I think we should go with. He already has the color scheme for the pamphlet. So back to the pamphlet. The front of the pamphlet would be that color scheme. The back, and that's number 1, you would also have the logo. It could say something like ID guide for shells, shorebirds, dune plants, rack line, scavenger, and what do you see, and then of course the logo. You would open it up. Oh, actually turn it over to the back, and that would also have the same color scheme as our beach access signs. At the bottom, it would say presented by Murph and the town council. We would have the town's Q&R code, and that's number 2. So I'll just go through real quickly what I have done, and then if you have any suggestions, just refer to the number. And you open the pamphlet, and you have 3, which I haven't really come up with anything, but I have content that could go in that space. You open it up, and you have number 4, number 5, number 6. I don't know if you're familiar with FWC and their outreach materials, but or if you're familiar with the Witheringtons, who have written books, but they have also supplied a pamphlet to FWC with a sort of rackline guide. It can be used as a scavenger hunt, and this is it. If you wanted to go into my FWC, you would be able to find that, or just look up Beach Rack ID Guide. And this is really cool stuff on what you find on the rack line. And I was thinking that we could have room for something like that, of course on a smaller scale, with 4, 5, and 6. Or we could do Seashell Guide on number 4. It would look like that. And this would be provided by the Sanibel Seashell Museum. They are willing to help us out with a little small seashell guide. Once they can see a draft, and they would also have to approve it. For number 5, I thought we could also do, which is available to us from FWC, those protected birds are among those that nest at Florida beaches. So it'd be just a little seashore nesting bird guide. And then, of course, number 6, from the content that we received from Rose Larkin, the dune plants and information. When you open it up, like this, you have number 7, 8, 9, which we could put the seashell guide, the bird guide, and the sea dune plant information on, or we could use this area for the rack line. Down below is 10A, 10B, 11A, 11B, 12A, and 12B. 12A, I thought we would put sea turtle information, lighting, sick, and what to do if you find sick or injured wildlife, to call FWC sea turtle. Some information like fill in the holes. 10B would be the beginning of a map. 11A, thank you for cleaning up your trash, your cigarette butts. Thank you for keeping your dogs on leash. Thank you for not chasing seashore birds. Don't ever cut a line. Please don't. Let's see. Please, something about CWA and shorebird nests. 12A, we could put information slow for manatees. Leave the plastic bags at home. Use beach bags, and don't forget your reusable water bottles. And 10B, 11B, and 12B would be a map with, for example, you can see my little gopher tortoise. I'm not a great drawer. Would be a map just pointing direction, not a street map, but just basically information map, maybe showing a few different streets of points of interest, but Bowditch, and then some information on No Wake Slow for manatees, maybe show the pier, slow, no wake, and show where Bay Oaks is, and Mound House with their Mound House logo, which I have, Newton Park logo, which I have, and to show where CWA is, and an arrow pointing to Lover's Key. So that is my rough draft. If you have any questions or you would like to add or change my rough draft, otherwise you would be today, what I'm asking is from my committee is approval to go with the proposal of Mr. Keith Stone, Design Incorporated, and that you allow me to move on to work with the town staff and this gentleman, and then he would be able to work up a draft to bring to for me to present to you at the next meeting.
I make a motion that we go ahead and work with Mr. Stone on this.
I second.
Wonderful.
Very well done, Jen.
Thank you.
Very good.
I love his palette. The palette will be really beautiful.
Really beautiful, it'll be eye-catching, and I think, instead of a lot of don't do this, I think if
Positive.
we really stay positive and thank people for doing things, it really comes across. And also, I believe a Seashell guide and information on the pictures with different birds and the sea dune plants, I think that will be really catchy. And do you agree that it should be that information should be on 4, 5, and 6?
Mhm.
And then you open it up and maybe use a smaller scale rack guide?
On
Yes.
oh, go ahead.
But I was just gonna say, title it maybe other items on the beach, and then in parentheses, put rec guide, because very few people might know what that is.
On the shelling, are you going to have something about live shells with sandals?
Yes.
Okay.
So I've spoken with the Seashell Museum, and they would basically do kind of what's in their pamphlet, but they would also add no live seashelling. And again, that will probably come once they get the initial draft, then and we've approved it, then I will hand it over to them, and then they will bring it back with what they have. And so again, this pamphlet is probably going to we'll be working on it in 2023.
Yeah. Cool.
Has he,
By then, maybe. Oh,
oops, I'm sorry.
I was gonna-
Has he given you an idea of the ratio of graphics and pictures to text that will work best on this format?
Yeah, so that was.
Because that will help us with content and getting the correct amount.
Most of the content I've already given him. I haven't shown you all of it. I can zoom through it. It's the rack line that I just showed you from FWC. Did you receive the email from Chad with the sea dune pictures and information
one
from Rose
from
Larkin?
Rose,
So
yes.
that would be content that's in there. So you've got the rack line information from FWC that I just showed you. You have the Seashell information guide from the Seashell Museum in Sanibel that I just showed you. Then you also have the FWC seashore nesting bird information I just showed you. You've seen the logos for Mound House. You've seen the logos for Bay Oaks. You've seen the picture and the information from the beach access signs. So the content that I would be using for 10A, 11A, and 12B would be information and content that's coming out of would be coming from FWC, Sea Turtle Inc. Like to show some information about attention boaters, speed zones. The information would be coming from You Can Help, Our Wildlife and Their Environment. So this content would be stuff that he would take and then fit it in where it would. So my rough draft, he may have to move things around, according to what works.
Right.
So,
I think it's awesome.
We do have in that proposal, we do have 3 provisions, like I said. So we would be able to, if we didn't like something or we had questions, we would be able to address that with him and he could see what he could do. But I have high hopes that I think that we're gonna get a really good pamphlet from him, and I look forward to finally just having a draft that we could take to town council and that we can all agree that will be a good outreach tool. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you so much for allowing me to present.
A++.
Yay.
Very good.
Okay, so that, we have all agreed to move on with that proposal with Keith and move on with that $500 and have the town get that organized.
Yes.
Okay. So where are we?
Projects.
Her information is on the back of that, so just give her a call if you still need stuff. But otherwise, we are at Murph Projects for the next thing. We only have 10 minutes.
Yes, and actually we have less because we have the Murph Award too.
Oh, yes.
And my project that I just wanted to discuss on that vegetation was that at the last meeting, I had an inquiry as to why the information on the flash drive was not yet posted onto the town's website. I received an email from Amy Baker, the town clerk, saying a motion had not been made, seconded, and voted on. I responded to her that back a year ago on June 9th, when I presented the original data from the invasive plant project, that a motion had been made by the chairman, Steve Johnson, and that it had been seconded by Mary Rose Spalletta, and that the motion had passed unanimously. I was going to propose another motion be made today, just to kind of
Cover your base.
cover bases, but with just 4 of us, is that?
Well, I think you have evidence that it's already been passed, but I motion to re-motion for it.
Yeah, it's really a
Crazy.
motion to put the information on the invasive plant project onto the town's website is the,
I motion to put the invasive plant information on the town's website.
And I second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's my project thing.
Sorry, Rose, thank you.
Do you have any ideas?
I was wondering about maybe if Murph could be sponsoring some of these cleanups that Tuna Skin has. If we could sponsor, maybe have water bottles, reusable water bottles for the first, I don't know how many people, or a T-shirt for the first number of people, just as a way to fill in for cleaning up the beach when other organizations are not cleaning up the beach. And also, I don't know if it's possible, but I'd love to have something arranged by kayak or paddleboard to go around the little mangrove islands and the canals and pull out debris and trash and fishing lures and hooks and fishing line.
And I have kayaks I could donate to that
Yeah.
cause. Have it a day where everybody gets together, paddleboards and kayaks, and clean up the bay.
Yeah,
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 I like that.
I like it too.
thank you.
I think that should be a discussion for next meeting. for some
Yeah.
Ideas, maybe.
And should we put that?
Yeah.
Sure.
And then it would become a budget item too, if you were talking about T-shirts and water
Mhm.
bottles and all that, that needs to be
Yes.
included, how much that would
And if we're
cost.
having a sign up in the first, depending on what we wanted to put into it, 20 water bottles or 25, or if we want to do a T-shirt, the way they,
Yeah, for all the,
Tuna Skin does, and that really, people like things for free.
I know. I know that. Okay. Ranger Rob.
I don't have anything personally, no.
I have enough projects on my hand.
And I already said the vegetation one was my concern, so that's it.
So then let's move on to Good Citizens Award, AKA the Murphy. Can anyone just quickly tell us what that is to anybody that's listening? A brief description of why it is that we do that.
So I would say the Murphy is a award that we give out. It's essentially calling out someone in the community for going above and beyond, or going out of their way outside of a job description, outside of just generally, but doing something that is to better the community for the environment, I would say.
Being
That's
good
an
stewardship.
excellent description.
Yes, excellent, and good stewardship. So it means that someone on this committee actually physically sees or hears about someone that's done something. I did hear, and I do have a Murphy. I did hear, hold on one second, and I do have pictures, but just quickly, key players that make the shorebird nesting program a success, and that I do have pictures for it and information on it that I can let Chad know. So,
And I also have one, Damian Maynard and Timothy Barbour, who are employees for the Lee County Parks and Rec Service. They were informed that there was a huge clump of invasive asparagus fern in Lynn Hall Park on the beach side of the walkway there. And Damian Maynard checked into it with his supervisor, and it was invasive, so he and Timothy went out and removed it, which is not an easy task because asparagus fern is not something you just cut off. You then have to dig out all of its tubular roots. And I also have a photo of those gentlemen.
they work for Lee County.
Parks and Rec, yes.
Either one of you have a Murphy?
No, I just, so it can be employees of organizations that are,
Yes, we just had the Coast Guard the last time, and we've had sea
I mean, if they're
turtle.
doing, just because, if they're working, if they're not getting paid, but they're out there doing something on their own time, then they qualify for a Murphy Award.
okay. Just
So-
need a clarification.
So yeah, I guess, were these guys on the clock and just doing their job, or was it kind of going above?
They had to go above because they were just informed. Well, actually, it was just Damien was informed that it was an invasive plant, so then he had to go and check with the supervisor, and then he had someone come with him to assist because it was a large area
Okay.
of invasive plants, so.
He came up with that project and got it approved through his supervisor.
Yes, he had to go and get it approved,
Under-
rather than just nodding and saying, sure, we'll take care of it, and walking away and not doing anything, so, yeah.
Murphy worthy.
Okay, so, all in favor for, Rose's Murphy, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
And well, since that's unanimous, I think we can move on and put
Was
mine.
yours for the bank then?
Yeah, I can put mine in a bank for next month. Okay, so let's see, members, items and reports.
I would like to add on to the next, I'm sorry, kind of broke in for you. I'm sorry. I'd like to add on to the next one. I want to bring up again the propeller guards. I don't feel like we were done with that discussion when we were kind of shut down for it. And I think there are other avenues and routes that we could go to try to get something to happen in our community for propeller guards, whether it's brought on by a grant or brought on by the city or brought on some type of thing. I think we should have a little discussion on that because I really think it would be beneficial for our community. Our seagrass is down past 95%. Our water quality is not improving, and we need to take some drastic measures and start setting an example of what we can do as an eco-friendly community.
I agree. So we need to put that on the agenda for,
Please, yes. So I will also email Chad after this to make sure that he gets that memo as well, to put on that.
members, items and reports. I feel like I always have a report. I can just tell you that I appreciate every organization, nonprofit, who members of the community and members here, how I'm so incredibly proud of the Murph pop-up and what we all bring to it and what we do. And I'm really proud of all of us. This is a committee that I've been on for a few years, and I'm really proud to say that I'm on Murph, and I just want, that's my only statement that I have, and that's it. Rose?
I would like to still say the cigarette containers
Yes.
for Times Square. It is still primarily a problem. I mean, there's a few cigar butts in there once in a while, but it's primarily cigarettes. So, but I also was hoping that the Public Works people could come up with some options themselves, and I don't know who was gonna be kind of the liaison with them to see what they suggested, because they're the ones who are gonna be actually picking up the material and distributing it, so.
Hopefully the state will pass no cigarettes.
We'll probably end up having more on the streets then.
I was gonna say,
If they can't smoke, they'll be coming off the beach to smoke. Okay, so.
Wendy, did you have anything? I kind of butted in before you.
No,
got
that's
to-
okay. Just that, for the project, I've already started looking into, how do you arrange this? How do you start this? So I'll have more information next month.
And I forgot about, now I feel, in light of our, the Sunshine Law discussion, I will give you all the dates. I don't have next month's, and again, I will get those, but just so we're all aware, and it's, of the dates
For pop-ups?
for pop-ups this month. Oh, you can go on the town website and look at the bulletin.
Let's do that.
Okay, yes, so they post it, and that's something also,
you wanna just pick a couple dates at the beginning of August until our
So,
next meeting?
that's a
so that-
great idea. Okay, so we meet, we have volunteers from the community, Fort Myers Beach Community Foundation that like to do it on Tuesdays at Newton Park. So we'll just go ahead and put on for August 9th. That's a Tuesday. And they liked the first Tuesday or the last Tuesday? Oh, it might change. The second to last Tuesday of the month, which would be the 23rd.
And those are for Newton Park.
Newton Park, and we'll just do Saturday the 6th at Times Square.
The more you can do Saturdays, the more I can be there.
The 20th and the 27th in Times Square. Are we all in agreement that those dates are okay? Not that you're saying that you're gonna be there, but it's okay to go ahead and have a pop-up on those dates and those locations with the committee members. If you would like to attend or volunteer, please look at the posted one on the bulletin, or I'll send it to Chad to put out, and then you can, however it's supposed to work. Okay, so we've got that. Okay, so members, items, reports, public comment. Nope. Okay. So set agenda for next meeting. Okay, so we have staff.
That's a budget.
Yep, the budget. So we'll set the agenda for the Murph budget fiscal year 2022. We'll set the agenda Murph budget fiscal year 23. We will set the agenda for discussion on the plants being on the listed on the website.
Yeah, we need to make sure that that's getting done, so yes, please.
Okay. And we'll continue we'll keep the Murph projects.
The manatee?
Oh,
I've got
propeller and
the propeller guards. I mean,
Wendy's.
and then Wendy's, wouldn't that fall under projects? For keeping the Murph projects, Wendy's, yeah, so you can discuss that under Murph projects.
Okay.
Okay,
I also think we need to add on there about patrolling the beach and the citations and everything, because Chad was supposed to have those numbers for me last time. And he said
Yes.
this time.
Okay, let's,
So maybe have a discussion with Chad about that, because
well, and he said he was gonna have some answers on,
he said that last time for this meeting. So that's why I wanted to put it on the agenda, maybe as a reminder for him to know that we're expecting those this time.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Under staff report,
Yeah, make it, maybe it under his staff
Okay.
report. or
Staff
something.
report.
and
Yeah,
Okay,
for what
so-
citations are being done and
how much collected.
questions we may have, because it always seems like that turns into a discussion, so we might as well make some time for it.
I actually like staff reports on the
Yeah.
agenda, so that's really good. All right, so we'll also include staff report on the agenda and the propeller guards under agenda. All right, anyone in favor of adjournment?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
All right, everyone have a good night.
Only 4 minutes late.
And these are the dates that you just agreed to.
Oh, wait, oh,
So you don't-
You know what,